All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Otuwane Family Podcast. As you know, I am Nnnemoma Chukumerije, and I'm one of the hosts of the podcast. And so we have a very interesting episode for you today. We'll be talking about the Igbo language and culture and exploring the language's importance today and the efforts to preserve the language. So we have a lot of really great guests for you today on this panel. As you can see, all generations here. And so I'm going to pass it around to each person to introduce themselves by letting us know their name, their age, if they're comfortable sharing it, and who your parents are or your family connection, so people listening can know who you are. So I'm going to pass it to Nkemka first to introduce himself.
My name is Nkemka. What's up to everybody around the diaspora, everyone just in the family. It's nice to see everyone. But my name is Nkemka, son of Nkem or Indiri and UK Chukumerije. I'm 20 years old. I just turned 20, and I am a junior in college, undergraduate school.
Thank you, Nkemka. And we will pass it to Nnenna.
Yeah, how are you, everyone? Nnenna Chukumerije. I am the parent on this podcast, here to give my insights, my perspectives on whatever this topic is, the language of Igbo. It's not whatever this topic is, I know what it is. Oh, they're all laughing at me. No, I do know what it is, and I'm here to just give my perspective as an adult. Hopefully I can do justice to just probably what most parents the challenges that we at one point or the other have faced in raising children in the diaspora in regards to Igbo language.
Thank you. And she's also my mom, for anyone who doesn't know, so. Okay, we're going to pass it to Nyla to introduce herself.
My name is Nyla Amaka Chukumerije, daughter of Ikem Chukumerije and Chantel Chukumerije. My age is 10 and I'm in 5th grade.
Thank you, Nyla. And last but not least, Ebube.
Hi, my name is Madioh. I am the daughter of Azuna Madioh, Chukumerije Madioh, and I am 23 years old and I'm in my 2nd year of med school.
Thank you. And I just want to give a special shout out to Nyla here, because when we originally sent out the email announcing that we were doing this podcast, it was actually Nyla's mom, Chantel, that said that Nyla had the idea to do this episode specifically on the Igbo language. Now, do you remember this? This was months ago. Kind of, no, not really. Just how brilliant you are. You just have all the ideas. You don't even remember where they're coming from. No, but this was actually inspired by you. So that's why I'm really glad that you're here on the call and we have different generations, different ages to give these perspectives to people. And hopefully those who are listening will be able to connect with each and every one of us, but especially those who you relate with the most.
Way to go, Nyla.
Yeah, Nyla. So to start us off, I'd love to hear from each of you about what does being Nigerian or being Igbo mean to you? What does that look like in your life? And anybody can jump in. Feel free to just share.
So my mic is unmuted. So, well, being Nigerian and being an Igbo in Nigeria, for me, just connotes a person of strength, a person of strong culture. And that wherever you go in the world, when Nigerians are being talked about, I think, yes, sometimes in a negative way, but a lot of times also we're being talked about as people who are very strong, and we are kind of success minded, and that being people who want to succeed despite all odds gives us that strength. So that strength is derived from just the need and the focus. We're very focused. And so we excel in a lot of things that we put our minds to. So being a Nigerian, being an Igbo at that, to me, just means that I am somebody who I'm here to represent, because there's a lot that my people are called to be.
Thank you.
I'll go next. To me, being Nigerian, it's a great opportunity. I love the culture. I love everyone's personality, the music, the food, everything about it. I mean, it's a really great opportunity. I love always getting to visit all my family members, learning more, and learning more about our culture and how we have like so many traditions and events to go to, and I just love all of that.
Awesome. Nkemka, what do you think?
I feel like being Igbo, just in general, being Nigerian, it's just having like being Igbo means having a culture, having a heritage, like Auntie said, like Nyla said. Also, like now I feel like being Nigerian or being and I mean anywhere in West Africa, like, or having that nationality is praised now, but it hasn't always been that way. So I feel like in general, I'm just proud to have parents who sacrifice so much. I feel like that's what it goes down to, or that's what I think about when I think about being Nigerian. It's just what my parents have instilled in me, and I think it's not just them, it's through the culture. It's through our ancestors, who I do not know much about, but I hope to know much more about. That's why I'm on this podcast. But just getting to learn more about a culture and having a place and a lot of family members to rely on. So it's been great.
Appreciate that. I agree with so many of these things that y'all have been saying. Ebube, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm echoing what has been said so far, but a strong sense of community is really what comes to mind when I think of being Nigerian, because, you know, in America, there's this strong presence of Nigerian immigrants, and no matter, if you're Igbo, if you're Yoruba, any sect of it, there is always a strong sense of bonding immediately in between any Nigerian, any family we come across. So I love seeing the unity that is always present. Like Nyla mentioned, any event that's there, it's just joy. It's just, a great sense of bonding. So.
And I'm gonna back that up with we just have the flavor. We just have the sauce. We have the juice, And anytime you tell someone you're Nigerian, I was hearing some people say things about, in the past, there are still some negative connotations and people may have some things to say, but mostly it is about the way we carry ourselves. We are very funny individuals. We have a lot of culture. We carry ourselves with pride. And I love letting people know any space I am that I'm Nigerian. Oh, did I tell you? Oh, did I mention? Oh, by the way, I'm Nigerian, because we got it like that.
Right.
So thanks for kicking us off with that, y'all. So kind of keeping that in mind and what you love about being Nigerian and what it means to you. Let's talk a little bit more about the Igbo language, and starting with the youth. What has your experience been trying to learn the Igbo language? What does it look like learning from your parents, learning by yourself, or even your desire to learn? Let's take it from there.
Yeah. I think since a young age, my parents have spoken Igbo to us. I mean, I grew up in California, Southern California, in a predominantly white city. So it was hard for us to be able to practice and speak the language ourselves. But as of right now, I do understand. I wouldn't know how much, like percentage wise, that I understand, but I think it should be like 60-70% I understand. At least our dialects. I understand there's multiple dialects of Igbo or different languages. So I think as far as learning the Igbo language, I mean, it's kind of what our parents have taught us, or we've heard our parents say that is what we've learned. But I think just like going forward, I think I was actually thinking about this because whether it's getting a tutor or getting someone to teach me how to speak the language, I think would be great, just so the language doesn't die with me. So I have to do my part to help, because I have half of it down if I understand it. So.
That's very real. And I'm wondering, you're saying you are at about 60-70% proficiency. So let me see if I'll put you on the spot and have mommy throw a couple words out at you. He's not ready.
He's like, no, you don't say.
He's not ready. What about others? Nyla, Ebube, what are your experience learning the Igbo language?
My experience trying to learn the Igbo language, it has been challenging but fun at the same time, since I don't have that much time to do it at home with my parents, since they're both working and I both have school. I mostly do it like every weekend when I visit Nnenna, and we get to like watch videos, go over it. She teaches me a lot of stuff. It is challenging keeping it consistent, but it is a really fun experience to do.
That's awesome.
And as for me, I unfortunately have not had a opportunity to learn a lot of Igbo. Growing up, both my parents were working, and so like I know very, very basic words, but I can follow along in like pidgin English, but in full Igbo I don't follow. But I have been inspired to learn more because during the pandemic, there were these apps that were coming out, like how to learn Igbo, and my cousins in Houston have a tutor from Nigeria that they Zoom and learn with. So I'm definitely on the lookout for how to start integrating some more learning opportunities, but so far I don't have, much of a grasp on the language.
Yeah, that's very real. We'll go to my mom in a second to tell us about her experience teaching it. But from my perspective too, I've always been very interested in learning the Igbo language as a young kid. My mom could probably attest to this. And let's say when I would come home from college on winter break or something, and I'll just ask my parents, just speak to me only in Igbo, solely in Igbo. And it would last maybe 23 minutes. And then we switch back to English. Because, we're in the US too. It's kind of hard to only be in Igbo the entire time. And I think I'm probably at 60-70% proficiency as well. But also based on our surroundings and where we are, it is hard to practice it. So Nyla, I think it's very cool that you're doing this weekly with your grandma to be able to learn now, because when you don't really have the circles of people around you who are speaking fluently, or when you are in college and you've moved away from home at any point and you're not hearing it all the time from your parents, it gets really, really hard to maintain. Mama, you want to jump in with your thoughts on what your experience was like trying to teach the Igbo language to us as kids?
Yeah, let's start with the name of this group. The real pronunciation. How about that? Since we're talking about teaching it, and then we go into probably how I didn't quite teach it or do well, establishing a foundation for it, because I think that's where all of your experiences, as you have articulated, and that's where stemming from what did the parents do to have you experience it and not all of it, or whatever. So This group is Oto Nwanne. So you know how you eat something and you say that, oh, it's so good, it tastes
Sweet.
so
It's
good.
sweet.
It's sweet, yes. Okay, I'm gonna have you guys pronounce it one after the other. This is me taking up the mantle right here to teach you how to say the name of your group, this forum properly. Is Oto Nwanne, Oto Nwanne. Okay? And Nkemka, you want to go first? Oto Nwanne. Then you're gonna say fast.
Oto is actually my middle name.
Oh,
Right, right. Like your grandpa, Oto, right? Oto Kalanda. So Oto Nwanne. Say it again.
Oto Nwanne.
Very good. Nnemoma, Oto Nwanne. You know how you say all the Oto? Oto Nwanne.
Otowanne.
Oto Nwanne. Exactly. Ebube.
Oto nwanne.
Oto Nwanne. So even if you want to slow down to say it, you catch it. Oto Nwanne. Oto Nwanne.
Oto nwanne.
Nwanne. Yes, exactly. Nyla, you want to give it a try?
Oto Nwanne.
Good. Oto Nwanne. Exactly. Like Nnemoma, Nwanne, Oto Nwanne. So this is who we are. And Oto Nwanne, as you guys know, it's just that thing that binds all of us together. The uniqueness, the familiarity, the camaraderie, just the idea that in community we are stronger and we are one. So that's kind of like how all of those are. So going back to as a parent, so as a parent, I was speaking from the angle of the one who probably should have had established a culture, because it all goes back to culture, right? Culture of speaking Igbo. There is intention and then there is practice, what comes with intention, whether one is able to do it or not. I would say that in our family, my husband and I, we did our best to kind of speak Igbo, but we didn't have a concentrated, intentional effort of saying, we're only going to speak Igbo in this house, and you have this time set apart for speaking Igbo and teaching you some basic things. So we didn't do that right. And I think also that obtains in a lot of families where people are just busy trying to provide. And that's what you guys said, that your parents were away a lot of times, they went to work and there wasn't really that parents come home, they're tired. But is that an excuse? I don't know. But life happens, and sometimes priorities that people should pay attention to, we don't quite pay attention to it. So while we cannot go back and undo, at least not in the generation of you guys who are already not speaking it very well, what we want to do is to make sure that the bridge or the gap is at least closed a little bit by us as we're becoming grandparents, just like Nyla's grandma is doing right now. Maybe have a do-over, have an opportunity for a do-over where we're not setting that second generation, our grandchildren, or sending them up a little bit, correct? Because guess what? Their parents are still going through the struggles that we went through when we were raising them. And so this is again passing that baton, if you will. When we compare the language of Igbo to maybe other people who speak it a lot, I think there is a thing about, and this is going back to why does it seem like we fail at teaching it in our homes? A lot of homes are not very that is, because you see a lot of posts where, so if there's even one person who is in diaspora and their children are speaking Igbo, people are so proud, people celebrate that, and they should be celebrated because it comes from the effort of the parents that they are putting in there to ensure that their children are speaking Igbo. Is a thing to be proud of. So how do we move forward with trying to make sure that we do better? It's just one having this kind of conversation and recognizing that for you guys to now pay to learn Igbo, for somebody to come and teach you Igbo at your young adult life, just means that we fail to recognize the importance of that in your early life. And so we should really be mindful that that does not continue, even if we have to maybe speak into the lives of younger people, younger parents who are just starting their own lives. I'm going to pause there. Maybe Nnema, you can redirect and let me know what I'm not saying that I should be speaking to.
Oh no, this is all really good. As I see everyone's face on the call, it's really taking it in, and we appreciate the wisdom. And I want to make sure that anyone who is listening, any adults who are listening, parents, don't feel like we are necessarily blaming you all, because of course it is on the parents to do the teaching, but just reiterating what you're saying about y'all came here as immigrants to this country trying to create a better lives for yourselves and your children. And so there's so much that you're navigating in this space. So yes, we are in this position now where we kind of have to take up some of the learning for ourselves, but there was also a lot that you were facing at the time to also prioritize this as well. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. But what's very interesting is now we sit in this position as Nigerian Americans, and clearly the young people on this call really want to learn Igbo for themselves in whatever way that looks like, including me. I've definitely bought courses that are still kind of sitting there unfinished, but I've tried, I bought them. I'll get back to it eventually. But we have this strong desire to learn, but then I don't know if anyone has had the experience of maybe going back to Nigeria or being around maybe Nigerian cousins who live there directly that will kind of make fun of you, or even aunties and uncles who will kind of poke fun at your inability to speak Igbo. Has anyone experienced something like that can speak to that?
Yeah, last Christmas I went back to Nigeria for my grandma's birthday, my grandma on my dad's side. And it was a lovely experience, but we went to my grandma's house and some of the aunties in the town came to talk and they were speaking to me in Igbo and I was just like smiling and nodding and I was like, yeah, but I didn't understand. And they're like, oh, how come you don't know? And everything. So, it encourages me to learn more, but I do feel like a little embarrassed that I don't know, so that I don't, try to use the small phrases that I know, because, the pronunciation might be off or I use, the wrong response or anything, but I will learn, I'll go back and I'll make them proud.
That's very real. I've had that experience plenty of times. And I think oftentimes the response in that moment for me would be, don't ask me, ask my parents. But then as we're kind of seeing on this call, at what point do you have to take the responsibility for yourself, knowing that, okay, I didn't learn up until this point, or I was only taught this much. Now, when do I kind of take the control into my own hands to go out and learn for myself? Which I see a lot of people on this call doing as well. Any reactions to that? More about this journey that you have planned for yourself to learn the Igbo language?
Yeah, in terms of going back to Nigeria and experiencing or having, or it's kind of like a guilt almost, like you go there. I think I had cousins that it's just I pronounced something wrong. But at the end of the day, I think I was like 13, maybe 16 at the time. Even though I'm 20, it's not that far removed. But I think I was more like not confident in my ability, or like just in general, my ability to, or my curiosity to eventually learn the language. At this point, it's like, it's fine if they make fun of what I'm saying as long as I'm trying. And going back to your point about being in the States, our parents coming here, I don't think it's really, or at least let me speak for myself. As far as my parents, I don't think it would be on them at all. I think coming to the States and having to adjust with no help, coming to a new state, a new country at that, and having to navigate that, having an accent as well. I know everyone has an accent, but in terms of being in America, they had an accent in comparison, an accent that was different from the people that were living here. So I feel like those factors, and then trying to provide for us. There's 3 kids. And everybody has their everything going on. Everybody's working, like we said. Everybody's trying to provide and make their kids strive for the best. So I think at this point, it's really on us as a generation to step up and try to take initiative. I think they've done enough. It's like what could they really have done? As I know they could have done maybe more in just speaking it to us, but at the end of the day, you're in America, so you're going to go out and then start speaking English. So you can try to maybe week after week, and I'm saying this like I've done it, but this is what I think needs to happen. Maybe we can start like a joint tutoring thing if people have time for that. I think that would be good. After just thinking about that, I think that'll be helpful. But if not, I think sadly the conversion rate from here to Nigeria is very low. So if you get a tutor in Nigeria, it shouldn't cost us much, even if we're students. So yeah.
Bringing up the conversion rate and everything. I love that idea about the tutoring, though. I think that's what's powerful about this podcast and us putting in more effort towards having family reunions and just connecting the family more closely, because I don't know if anybody has had that idea before that I've heard. But if anyone who's listening, if there is an adult who speaks Igbo very well, who may be interested in doing some weekly Zoom or so tutoring classes, speak up, let your voice be heard, because I think this is something that a lot of people would have interest in, including myself. Probably others on this call too would be interested in that for sure. I have a question for Nyla specifically, because Nyla, I think your experience may be slightly different than ours, considering that that your dad is Nigerian American, your mom is Black American, and so your experience is slightly different in terms of not having a direct parent that is full Nigerian in that sense, right? So is there anything you want to share about what that experience kind of is like in learning the language?
So when it comes to my dad, I know that he did live in Nigeria for a little bit, but then he came down to America, so he kind of lost his accent, some of his his Igbo language, and since like once in a while he will he will call Nnenna, and he'll be like we'll just check up on her. She'll sometimes speak to me in Igbo. Sometimes I'll remember what to say. Sometimes I won't. She'll still teach me and be like, oh, okay, so this is what you need to work on. Since my dad doesn't know that many words, he will try his best to figure out a way to see my grandma weekly, so then I can be able to learn it. And it is challenging, but as long as I get a chance to go to her house at least every weekend, I will be able to get a chance to actually speak it. Right now, we're mostly working on the basic words, so it's kind of easy right now. But once we get to the sentences, it's gonna get harder and harder. And I do like the idea of having a tutoring every week, maybe after school or on the weekends too, because that would really help me too.
That's awesome. I love being able to hear you share your experience and perspective on this. And it also says a lot about your parents putting in that effort to be able to help you learn. Even if they may not know it completely themselves, they're like, all right, we're going to go to grandma's house so you can learn, and actually put that intention behind it, which is huge. Because I think about myself having kids, and honestly, I think I may be learning from the basics with them. We're going to get the books together and we're going to be learning from scratch. Or if I live close enough to mommy, I already told mommy my kids are coming to their house for extended periods of time. So they'll be having their Igbo lessons there as well.
Well, you know that earlier I said that we sort of missed some of these opportunities, and the grandparents have one for a do-over. So yeah, I look forward to that, just like Nyla's grandma is doing. I do like how you guys on this call, the generation that we're talking about right now, it is my sense that the interest to learn Igbo, to learn your culture, to assimilate as much of that Nigerianness and Igbo-ness that we talked about earlier as possible. And that's why we're having this kind of conversation. And I like that you are actually now taking it upon yourself to learn. At the end of the day, I think it still is about intentionality. So while we may, yes, we give grace to the parents who haven't done, who were not intentional for whatever season of life that led them not to be that, we give them grace, we give us grace, I give myself grace. But like you guys said, then you don't just stop there, because one of your questions or one of the things that you want to touch upon in this call is the idea of the Igbo language being in danger of being extinct or something like that. You're probably going to touch upon that, but this is how we make sure that it doesn't die out, or that it doesn't get so diluted that it begins to affect some of the basic tenets of the strong Igbo people and their culture. So I'm glad that you guys are taking it upon yourself to learn and just do things around learning and becoming better.
Thank you. And I feel more inspired now based on this conversation to actually take it seriously and not just talking about wanting to learn, or, we'll have our apps to learn Spanish and people want to learn Mandarin and all these other languages, but how can we put that intention towards our own language too and put as much energy behind that?
Yeah.
So this concept of, is the Igbo language disappearing? I know Nkemka touched on it earlier. Mommy, you just touched on it. What are our thoughts about whether the language is disappearing or not?
Well, I don't know whether you guys, because already you have the disadvantage of not knowing enough of it. So how can you possibly, I don't know, I think the answer is, I hope not. I hope not, and I don't think so, because that's like saying, is the Igbo as a people, are we in danger of disappearing? While the people may remain, and the language, which is how the people express themselves, may be diluted or changed. One does not necessarily mean the other, but I think that they are both so intertwined that that the language, we ought to be doing everything that we can to make sure that no, it doesn't disappear. It's not disappearing. It's diluted. It's probably not as strong as it ought to be. And that's why we're having this kind of conversation. I know that wherever the Igbos go, you kind of know, you will know an Igbo by just the way that they are, by the entrepreneurship, the strength of character that they have. They may not always speak the language, but at the end of the day, you ultimately will know just by how successful they strive to be. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Other thoughts? Anyone want to add to that or think any differently?
I'm not gonna necessarily say it's going extinct, but I do know that, like Auntie Nnenna said, it's kind of growing less strong since people are coming to America and learning English and kind of forgetting about our language and forgetting how to speak it. And it's from what I've heard from Nnenna, she does say like it's kind of hard going back and forth visiting Nigeria and then coming back to live here because you have to like somehow keep the consistent of learning the our language English and then learning Igbo and switching off from that during while you're going to Nigeria and while coming back.
I can see that. So the transition can be difficult at times. Yeah. I also wouldn't necessarily say that it is disappearing, but I do think the risk of major dilution and disappearance is there, unless we really are intentional in what we're doing. Because let's say we leave this call and we were all gung-ho about learning, or we bring out this idea of having a class, and then in a few years, we still don't put in the effort to learn, and we're many decades down the line, and we have children and or have grandchildren after that, right? And if no one actually holds on to it, where does it go? Where does it go? Because I know for myself, I think I said 60-70% proficiency. It could be 40-50 potentially, you know? So I don't know. It really does take the effort upon us to make it happen.
I think also, kind of as we're saying, as people, move from Nigeria and start to settle in other places, a lot of times these new areas that they're living in, there are no other Nigerians or it's very few. So it's hard to, maintain your culture if you don't have a community to interact with, because maybe, the parents come and settle and they can speak Igbo to the rest of their family. But when the kids learn it, they don't have anyone to interact with. So it's harder for it to kind of cement in their identity. I know that happened to me because I live in South Louisiana and there was, one other Nigerian in our town, like a Nigerian family. And so I would have, my, I'd be eating gari and my friends at school, like, what is that? Why are you eating that? So it kind of alienates you from your culture if the only exposure you get is directly at home. So I think now that we have all the virtual things, I think it's a great idea that we're building community because it just opens up another avenue for us to interact with each other.
Yes, very true. So glad for these virtual spaces to be able to have these conversations. And as we wrap up here, I'm wondering if anyone has any final thoughts to share about this topic with us here, or anyone who's listening.
I think it's just like a final push to just maybe just be more intentional, like we're all talking about. I think being intentional about keeping the language alive in that sense. And I also don't think it's there's another perspective as well, like even in Nigeria as well, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but people who live in Lagos, people who live in the capital in Abuja or other areas, Port Harcourt, or somewhere like there, like they might not be as like the language in those areas may not be like it might be diluted as well. This might not be a problem that is just in the States or just everywhere else other than Nigeria. So it's just another call that maybe maybe we just have to take a like a better approach to it and try to be intentional about actually carrying out a tutoring session or something like that. Yeah.
Well said, Nkemka.
Yeah, that is in fact true, that some people in Nigeria, some families, their children they struggle. It may be even worse than some of the people born outside of Nigeria. That is a fact. I do want to again acknowledge all of what you guys are thinking, and call on just the parents as somebody who is, who in retrospect, I just, I feel like I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough, not just that I feel like it, I just didn't do enough in children. I want to use this opportunity to really encourage anyone who even has an opportunity to do things differently right now. It's never too late, because the language and culture, languages and cultures do change over time, especially with how things change in the world right now. Any language then can get so diluted that you may not even recognize it. So it's not just Igbo. The one thing that may not be spoken of very easily or, acknowledged is just the idea that Igbos by nature, when we go anywhere, we tend to absorb so much of what's not ours that we have a tendency to even neglect that which we already have, such as this language, right? And that's where, as the young people now, who want to do something different, such as hold the culture, make sure it doesn't go into extinct, that the appreciation of who we are as Igbos remains something that is so strong in you guys. And that's exactly what you're saying, that you go even to the extent of ensuring that you know the language, because the language really, any language that anybody speaks first says who you are. You speak Igbo and it's like, oh, what language is that? What tribe is that? What race is that, right? People don't look at you and say you're Igbo. They hear you and then they say you're Igbo. So language comes before anybody knows what tribe you represent by that language. That's why it's very important. So I give you guys kudos for having this conversation. I don't know if I added any value, but it is my thought that our parents, we can do better.
Thank you. No, you definitely added value to the conversation. And I want to thank everybody who has been on this panel, sharing your unique perspective, and putting that ask out there to anyone who's listening to take this call back and have conversations with your family members about it. And just talk about what your experience has been, and whether, if you do have interest in learning the Igbo language, let's talk about it with each other, because I think there really is an opportunity here to not just kind of let this sit here, or not just have everybody in their own separate silos learning alone, but for us to be able to use this virtual world to be able to learn together. So appreciate y'all for joining the call. Thank you so much. And everyone should tune in for our next episode, where it will actually be Toya hosting, and we'll be talking about the immigrant experience with some of the adults who immigrated over here to learn about their stories. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good evening. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Take care. Bye.